So tell me, do you like a good Ritz cracker? Maybe with some cheese or an artichoke dip? If you live near a factory that had Ritz products, would you break in and steal a couple of cartons of crackers? Well, I guess that would depend on how much you like crackers. Well, today's story takes us way back to December 3, 1959, and we find ourselves in front of 1000 Pacific Street in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and that's between Classen and Grand Avenues. Today, if you go there, it's a big empty lot, but in the 1950s, it was a very large building that served as the warehouse for National Biscuit Company, or Nabisco. At the time, Nabisco made Fig Newtons, vanilla wafers, saltine crackers, and Barnum's Animal Crackers. In 1957, in the depths of the Cold War, New York City actually stored Nabisco crackers in a building on 15th Street for fallout shelter stocking. Anyhow, it was 2:30 a.m. on December 3, and patrolman Eugene Gibbons and his partner were on radio motor patrol in the vicinity of the very large National Biscuit Company warehouse at 1000 Pacific Street. When they turned the corner onto Pacific Street, they had a perfect clear view of any individuals who might be on the street and up to no good. And it was then that they observed a young, husky man reaching up to a ground floor window in the middle of the block. Upon their approach, this young, husky man, who turned out later to be Van Griffin, walked away with 2 cartons of Ritz crackers in his arms. Patrolman Gibbons' partner apprehended Van Griffin, who wisely didn't resist arrest, and it was then that Gibbons observed the screen on the window through which the Ritz crackers had been passed. He noticed that it was bent away from the frame and that the window was lifted up. Now, Gibbons must have been a very nimble patrolman because he hoisted himself up through the window into the garage section of the warehouse. Now, Griffin's accomplice, the one inside, who later turned out to be Arthur Graham, made no response to an order to come out into the open. However, no sooner than did the officer throw on the lights in the plant did Arthur roll himself out from underneath a truck where he had hidden himself. He surrendered, and the search for him didn't last much more than maybe 30 seconds. That's a pretty good time. The patrolman sniffed the air, and he smelled an alcoholic odor emanating from Arthur. Arthur readily admitted to having forced the screen apart, lifting the window, entering the facilities, and finding a couple of cartons of crackers, which he passed to his accomplice, Van Griffin. Griffin also stank of alcohol, and he wasn't as cooperative at first. He told the assistant district attorney that he found the crackers on the street. He said that he saw a man climbing out of the window of the cracker factory and that this man must have dropped the packages. Well, of course, there was a man that went in there, and that person was him. Now, the cost of the crackers wasn't all that much. The night manager of the plant stated that the window screen was forced and that the crackers themselves had a value of about $12. So, at about 4 a.m. in the morning, the 2 boys were booked for burglary. Arthur made a quick confession about the burglary, and he blamed it on intoxication. He said that he and Griffin had been out drinking wine during the night hours right before the break-in. He did not recall who suggested doing the crime, and he believed that they committed the burglary impulsively. He said that they just happened to be walking by the Biscuit Company during a nice evening stroll, and when they saw the screen of the window pulled away from the wall at the bottom, they decided to enter and score some quick loot. It was pretty easy to raise the window, and they didn't even have to break it. And Arthur pulled himself up and through the window. And some cartons of Ritz crackers were handy, and he immediately handed 2 of those cartons out through the window back to Van Griffin. Now, when the police approached, Arthur had hid beneath the truck, as we know, and he said that the police threatened to shoot him and they slapped him around. Now, he said that this was uncalled for considering the intoxicated state that he and Van Griffin were in. Now, I wonder, would he have said the same thing if he wasn't drunk? Anyhow, Griffin also confessed to his role in the crime, and like his pal Arthur, he pleaded the same excuse, intoxication. Although in the past, both boys had been members of the Chaplains gang, but they belonged to different branches of the gang, and there were many different factions of Chaplains in Brooklyn. So they were only distantly acquainted until they met at Great Meadows Prison. Now, I'm going to take a look at Van Griffin's involvement with the Chaplains, which seemed rather robust, shall we say. On February 16, 1955, he appeared in Brooklyn Children's Court for participating in a gang fight and being caught with possession of a switchblade. On July 14, 1956, Griffin and 2 others were arrested on a charge of a possession of a zip gun. Now, he was permitted to plead guilty to disorderly conduct on this one. But then, on November 12, 1956, he was arrested for stabbing someone in the back in a gang fight. Now, also in 1956, he was in a street fight, but this time he was on the wrong end and he had to get medical aid for a stab wound just below his left orb. Now, like Arthur, Griffin claimed that the screen was loose on the window. And just like Arthur, he couldn't recall who made the suggestion to commit the burglary or even who pushed up the window. He said that alleged beatings at the 80th precinct in Brooklyn did not loosen his tongue at the time. Now, Mr. Dews represented the National Biscuit Company, and he said that it was their inclination that the defendants be treated leniently. He said the screen was easily bent back into place without cost to the company, and the loot was recovered. And it was very difficult for him to see how any considerable haul could have been made by the burglars, because even though they got the crackers, it was mostly cookies that were around the plant, and they are actually in very large and cumbersome packages, not easy to get at. Mr. Dews was inclined to put the crime into the minor category, pretty much in line with petty theft from the plant, which would happen from time to time when the garage doors would be left open for whatever reason. Now, as we know, both defendants claimed extreme intoxication as the cause of the crime, but this intoxication wasn't observed by everyone. Now, the police noticed it, but Mr. Dews, the plant manager, didn't. Despite the minor nature of the crime, Van Griffin was actually sentenced to Elmira for a 2.5 to 5 year sentence, and that's without getting a chance to taste the Ritz crackers. Now, no doubt his previous record, which I just relayed to you, played a role in him getting such a long sentence for such a minor crime. This brings us back to the cracker caper. I checked, and I was just kind of curious to see what some of Nabisco products are today. So I'm going to give you a list of some of the items. This is by no means an exhaustive list. There's bacon dippers, Chips Ahoy, Crispers, which I think is a product in Canada, Dad's Cookies, Doodads, Fudgio Cookies, Oreos, Rice Thins, Ritz Crackers, and Wheat Thins. Now there's more, of course, but on that list, my favorite is Oreos. So tell me, what is your favorite Nabisco Biscuit Company product? I would love to hear what it is. Type it in the comments below. And thank you very much for watching this video. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great day.